The morning light creeps slowly through the curtains, casting soft, pale streaks of sunlight across the dusty wooden floors of the small, isolated house. The air is biting, sharp and unyielding. The cold from the night before still lingers, wrapping itself tightly around the house, making every breath seem heavier than the last. The storm that raged through the night has now passed, leaving only a hushed silence behind. The wind outside continues to whip through the trees, bending branches like fragile twigs, but inside there's stillness. A stillness that feels unnatural. Thomas stands by the window, holding a steaming mug of coffee in his hands, but he doesn't drink. His eyes are focused on something beyond the glass, the world outside that seems so far away. The weight of his thoughts presses down on him like a physical force. But it is not the cold that chills him, it's the overwhelming sense of isolation. His mind replays the accident over and over again, the screech of tires, the impact that shattered everything, and the look in Max's eyes as the dog, once full of life and energy, now lay broken and silent in the wreckage. Max, his German shepherd, had been his companion for years. They had been inseparable. From the early morning runs in the park to the quiet nights spent curled up on the couch, Max was more than a dog, he was family. He had always been there, reliable, steady, and full of affection. But now, Max lay motionless on the living room floor, his eyes glazed over, barely aware of the world around him. It had been days since the accident, and Max had not moved. Not a twitch, not a wag of the tail, nothing. Thomas stands there, staring at the dog, feeling helpless and defeated. His breath catches in his throat as he watches Max's chest rise and fall in shallow, labored breaths. The dog's once vibrant energy is now replaced with an eerie stillness, as though he's trapped between two worlds. Alive, yet not fully present. It's as if Max is frozen, unable to move, unable to escape the weight of the trauma that has gripped him. For a moment, Thomas closes his eyes and tries to push the guilt away. He blames himself for the accident. He should have been more careful. He should have seen it coming. But guilt isn't something that can be easily dismissed. It weighs heavily on him, wrapping itself around his chest, making it harder to breathe. He feels as though he's failing Max, his best friend. How can he help a dog who won't respond? How can he reach out to him when he's so far gone? Thomas walks over to Max slowly, his steps hesitant, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace in the room. He kneels beside the dog, his fingers brushing gently against Max's fur. The touch should be comforting, but instead, it feels like a desperate attempt to hold on to something slipping through his fingers. Max doesn't react. There's no wag of the tail, no acknowledging look, not even a soft sigh, nothing. Just the cold, quiet emptiness that has settled over the house like a thick fog. Thomas exhales sharply, his chest tight with frustration. He's tried everything. He's tried food, toys, even his favorite ball. He's tried speaking softly to Max, calling his name, but nothing seems to reach the dog. Max's silence is deafening, and it's breaking Thomas piece by piece. He can't keep watching this. He can't keep seeing his best friend like this. It's as if the dog has given up. But Thomas refuses to give up on him. He leans down, his voice barely above a whisper, as he calls Max's name once more. Max. The sound of his own voice feels strange in the room, foreign, as though he's speaking to someone else entirely. Max's eyes flicker for just a moment, but a brief spark of recognition, but it's gone as quickly as it came. Still, Thomas refuses to let go. He knows Max is in there somewhere. He has to be. In the past, Max had always been the one to cheer him up, the one who would comfort him after a long day, the one who always seemed to know when Thomas needed him the most. Now, it's Thomas's turn to do the same for Max. But what if it's too late? What if Max is too far gone? The thought lingers in Thomas's mind, gnawing at him. But he pushes it aside. He can't think that way. He won't think that way. Thomas stands up, his hands trembling as he runs them through his hair. He paces the room, the coldness of the walls pressing in on him. He doesn't know what to do. He can't lose Max, not like this. He's tried every option he knows, but nothing seems to work. He's out of ideas, out of hope. The dog that had once been his source of comfort is now a reminder of his failure, a symbol of his inability to fix what's broken. But as Thomas looks back at Max, something shifts. The room feels warmer, the air feels less heavy. A tiny spark of hope flickers inside him, fragile but undeniable. Max isn't gone. Not yet. There's still time. There has to be. Thomas walks back over to Max and kneels beside him again. His hand reaches out, brushing through the dog's fur. This time Max shifts slightly, his body twitching just enough for Thomas to notice. It's barely perceptible, but it's there. Max's eyes flicker, a tiny spark of life returning. It's not much, but it's enough. Enough to remind Thomas that his friend is still here, still fighting, still holding on. The smallest of movements, the faintest of sounds, and yet it's everything. Thomas's heart races, hope flooding through him. He doesn't know what's happening, but he knows one thing for sure. He's not giving up. Not yet. Not when there's even the slightest chance. He stands up, determination rising in his chest like a fire. There's still hope, and with that hope, Thomas knows he'll do whatever it takes to help Max, to bring him back from the edge. The room is silent, save for the occasional crackling of the old wooden floorboards under Thomas's shifting weight. He sits in the corner, his legs stretched out in front of him, but his thoughts are miles away. Max, lying motionless on the couch, seems to fade further and further into the shadows of the room. The weight of the silence between them presses down, suffocating the space, thick with unspoken fears. The world outside, once bustling with the sounds of morning birds and distant traffic, now seems like a far-off place, a world where life continues while Thomas and Max remain trapped in this suspended state of waiting. The faint light from the single window in the living room barely penetrates the dense, grey clouds of dusk that have gathered overhead. Thomas watches as the last slivers of daylight slip away, replaced by the heavy shadows of evening. The house, once filled with laughter and the patter of paws on hardwood floors, is now a hollow shell, echoing only with the sounds of Thomas's anxious breathing. He had never felt more alone. It's been a week since the accident, a week since Max was torn from the active, vibrant dog he once was. The memories of their shared moments seem so distant now. Max running beside him on their morning jogs, playing fetch in the yard, nuzzling up to him on cold nights as if the world could end and nothing would matter as long as they were together. Those memories now feel like another life, a life that Thomas isn't sure he can ever return to. Tonight, the silence is unbearable. Thomas can feel the weight of his own thoughts pressing against him, threatening to break him under their suffocating grip. The questions spin in his mind like a whirlwind. What's happened to Max? Why won't he move? Why is he so distant, so unreachable? Thomas feels the guilt swirling inside him like a heavy fog. He should have been more careful, should have protected Max from harm. But in that moment of chaos, he had been as helpless as his dog. Neither of them could stop the inevitable. He remembers the sound of the crash, loud bone shattering. He remembers the sudden stillness afterward, the ringing in his ears, and the way Max had let out a pained whimper before collapsing into the wreckage. He can't shake that image, the image of Max, lying lifeless in his arms, the weight of his friend's body pressing down on him, and the horrible realization that he couldn't protect him. It's a thought that haunts Thomas every moment of every day. The coldness, the stillness in Max's eyes, the way the dog seems so far removed from the world he once knew. Thomas can't shake the feeling that Max isn't just physically hurt. There's something deeper, something that goes beyond the broken legs. It's as though Max's spirit has been crushed, and Thomas fears that he may never get that back. But tonight, the fear feels different. The shadows in the room seem darker, the silence deeper, as though the very walls are closing in on him. Every time he looks at Max, it's like looking at a stranger. A dog he doesn't recognize, a dog who isn't the one he knew. The dog he once shared everything with has been replaced by a ghost, a shell of the animal who had always been by his side. Thomas lies down on the couch, trying to shake off the growing anxiety clawing at his chest. The house feels too small now, the air too thick. He pulls his knees up to his chest and buries his head in his arms. Every sound outside, the faint whistle of wind through the trees, the distant hum of passing cars, feels like a distant memory of a world he doesn't belong to anymore. Max, despite his physical pain, still has a presence, an undeniable weight in the room. but it's a presence that feels fragile, like it could slip away if Thomas doesn't act fast enough. His own breath comes in short, shallow gasps as the weight of his helplessness mounts. He has no answers, no solutions, only questions. He can't even seem to bring himself to reach for his phone and make a call. The thought of hearing Claire's voice, the voice of the woman who might have the answer, the one who might be able to save Max, seems like too much to bear. What if it's already too late? What if he's failed his dog, his best friend? But then, as the minutes stretch into hours, something inside Thomas shifts. It's not a moment of clarity, not an epiphany, but rather a quiet realization that if he doesn't try, if he doesn't reach out, he'll lose Max forever. That's the thought that fuels his trembling fingers as he grabs his phone from the table beside him. He takes a deep breath, wiping the cold sweat from his brow, and dials Claire's number. The phone rings twice before she picks up. Thomas. Her voice is calm, steady, and yet there's a tinge of concern that sneaks through the lines. She's worried about him, he can tell. Claire, he says, his voice rough, cracked. I don't know what to do. Max, he won't respond. He's not moving, and I think he's giving up. I'm scared. I'm scared I'm losing him. For a moment, Claire is silent on the other end of the line. Then she speaks, her words soft but filled with reassurance. Don't give up on him yet, Thomas. He's still there. You just need to give him time and maybe a little help. I'll be there soon. Don't worry. Her words, though gentle, pierce through Thomas's growing despair like a shard of light. Maybe, just maybe, there's a way to save Max. Maybe it's not too late. He can't give up. He won't give up. The chapter ends with Thomas feeling a strange sense of hope. It's tentative, fragile, but it's there. He knows that the road ahead will be hard and uncertain, but for the first time in days, he feels a glimmer of something beyond fear. He feels the first stirrings of possibility. The day drags on as the cold evening settles in like a thick fog, wrapping itself around the house, suffocating everything within it. Thomas sits in the same chair by the window, his gaze fixed on the dimming sky. The last rays of sunlight slip through the curtains, casting long, angular shadows across the walls. But those shadows are not the only things that stretch long and dark in this moment. So does Thomas's sense of dread. The phone in his hand feels heavy. He's replayed Claire's reassuring words over and over in his mind. But even her calm voice can't seem to shake the gnawing feeling that something is slipping away, slowly but steadily, beyond his grasp. Max hasn't moved since that morning, not once. Not a flicker of movement, not a sound. He lies there on the couch, like a statue carved from stone, eyes vacant, breathing shallow. The air in the room is thick with the smell of stale coffee and the faint odor of old, unused furniture. Thomas hasn't left this room in what feels like days. The weight of the guilt that drapes over him is unbearable. He feels paralyzed, trapped in this loop of fear, grief, and helplessness. His fingers ache from the constant tension of holding his phone, as if the device alone could be the key to unlocking the answers, but the only thing it offers is silence. In the back of his mind, a voice keeps repeating, over and over, what if it's too late? What if he's already gone? It's a thought that lingers like smoke in his lungs, impossible to expel. He can't shake the image of Max's glazed eyes, the lifelessness in his movements. Max is still here, but Thomas is unsure whether his best friend is truly with him or trapped somewhere beyond reach. A sharp, sudden noise disrupts the silence, and for a moment, Thomas's heart leaps into his throat. It's Max, a small twitch, his tail. Just a fraction of movement. Thomas stands up too quickly, his legs unsteady as he crosses the room, his breath catching in his throat. Max's eyes blink, just once. The faintest glimmer of recognition of something human, something real, flickers across the dog's face. Thomas kneels beside him, his hands shaking as they hover just above Max's fur. The dog doesn't react. But for a brief moment, Thomas can feel it. A subtle energy, something beyond the physical stillness. He whispers Max's name, almost afraid to disturb this fragile, tenuous connection. The world outside continues on, unaware of the battle unfolding within the four walls of this small house. In his heart, Thomas feels the pang of something deeper, something primal that connects him to this dog in a way that words could never express. He doesn't just want Max to survive, he needs Max to come back to him. But Max doesn't respond, not in the way Thomas hopes. His tail remains still, his eyes continue to stare off into nothingness. The fleeting flicker of hope, that brief glimmer of life, is gone. It's as though Max is unreachable again, slipping back into the cold void where the trauma resides, and Thomas is left alone, unsure of where to go from here. The doorbell rings, cutting through the suffocating silence. Thomas jumps, startled by the sound, but his heart leaps with a sense of relief. It's Claire. She steps into the house quickly, her presence filling the room with an energy that immediately breaks the tension. Claire is composed, calm, everything Thomas wishes he could be right now. She steps over to Max, her eyes scanning him with practiced precision. Her fingers move gently over Max's body as she assesses the dog's condition. Thomas stands back, his hands gripping the edge of the couch, his eyes following her every move. He wants to ask questions, to beg her for answers, but the lump in his throat makes words impossible to form. Instead, he watches in silence as Claire moves around Max like she's known this dance for years, her focus unwavering. "It's okay, Thomas," she says softly after a moment, her eyes meeting his. "We'll get him through this, I promise." Her words, though soothing, don't entirely ease the storm of worry brewing in Thomas's chest. He wants to believe her, wants to trust her, but the fear is too deep, too ingrained to ignore. It's as though he's standing on the edge of a cliff, peering into an abyss, unsure if he can trust the ground beneath his feet. But then, as Claire continues to work, something unexpected happens. Max's tail twitches once, then again. A faint sound escapes his throat, a soft whimper. It's barely audible, but it's there. And suddenly, in the presence of this stranger, Max begins to stir. His eyes flicker, trying to focus on Claire's face, then Thomas's. Thomas's heart pounds in his chest as the realization settles in. Max isn't gone. He's still here. And though the road to recovery will be long, perhaps this is the moment that will make all the difference. Claire's voice is calm, her tone reassuring as she continues to work. She helps Max shift his weight, slowly, gently, as though each movement is fragile, like they are both standing on a precipice. But there is something in her touch, something in the way she speaks to Max, that fills the room with a sense of possibility. Max responds to her touch in ways he hadn't responded to Thomas. It's not that Thomas has done anything wrong, he knows that. But Claire's quiet confidence, her calmness in the face of Max's trauma, somehow gives the dog a sense of security that he's been missing. It's as if the weight of Thomas's fear and guilt has prevented Max from finding his way back. "See?" Claire says, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's still here. It's just going to take time. Let's take it slow, step by step." Max's body trembles as Claire adjusts him slightly. He is still fragile, still broken, but there is hope now, a spark that wasn't there before. For the first time in days, Thomas feels something shift inside him. The suffocating fear begins to ease, replaced by a quiet sense of hope. It's not a loud, overwhelming relief. No, it's a small, delicate hope, the kind that begins with the slightest of movements, the softest of sounds. Max's breathing steadies. His eyes blink again, this time with a little more awareness, a little more life. Thomas looks at Claire, his expression filled with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. He can't find the words to thank her, but the look on his face speaks volumes. This is just the beginning, Thomas knows. The road ahead will be long, and the healing will come slowly. But as he looks down at Max, he realizes that they've crossed a threshold. They've passed the point of no return. And for the first time in what feels like forever, Thomas allows himself to believe that everything will be okay. The night after Claire's visit, the house is quieter than it's been in days. The air still carries a chill, but it doesn't feel as oppressive as it did before. A sense of calm has settled over the room, though it's fragile. The silence now feels less like a suffocating weight, and more like the quiet after a storm. The kind of silence that comes after the wind has howled and the clouds have parted, leaving behind the faint hum of life returning. Max is lying on his side, his body slightly curled, resting with shallow but steady breaths. Thomas sits in the armchair across from him, his gaze fixed on the dog. He watches every small movement, every twitch of Max's muscles, his ears flicking at the sounds in the house. Max is not fully awake, but he is no longer completely shut off from the world. For the first time in days, Thomas can see a flicker of recognition in Max's eyes, the barest hint of his old self beginning to emerge from beneath the fear and trauma. The house feels more alive with Max's subtle movements, the faint rustle of the dog's fur, and the soft sound of his breathing. Thomas breathes a sigh of relief, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the past few days has finally started to lift, even if just a little. But he knows this isn't the end, not by a long shot. The healing process is only just beginning. As Thomas watches Max, he can't shake the feeling of guilt that still gnaws at him. It's a quiet, insistent voice in the back of his mind, reminding him of the crash, of the terror in Max's eyes, of the helplessness he'd felt in that moment. He couldn't protect Max, couldn't keep him safe. He failed him. The doorbell rings, its sudden sound cutting through the room, and Thomas jumps. His heart races for a brief moment, but then he exhales, recognizing the source of the sound. It's Claire. She had promised she'd be back today, but Thomas wasn't sure what to expect. He knows she's coming to check on Max, to ensure that he's stable enough to handle the next steps of his recovery. Claire steps inside, and there's an immediate sense of calm that follows her, a quiet assurance in the way she moves. Her eyes sweep over the room, scanning Max first. She can see the improvements immediately. His slight movements, the alertness in his eyes, the small shift of his legs as though he's testing his strength. It's a good sign. How's he been? Claire asks, her voice soft but filled with concern. Better. Thomas replies, though his voice is tinged with uncertainty. He wants to believe that Max is on the road to recovery, but the doubt lingers, as it has since the accident. He's moving a bit more. A little bit of life is coming back to him. Claire approaches the dog slowly, taking her time to assess his condition. She kneels beside Max, her hands warm as they gently run over his body. Max doesn't flinch, he doesn't pull away. Instead, he turns his head, his eyes meeting Claire's. It's a soft, tentative gaze, but it's there. Max is starting to trust again. He's strong, Claire murmurs, a soft smile crossing her lips. We'll get him back on his feet. But it's going to take time. I know you want to rush, Thomas, but it's important that we go slow. Thomas nods, but the weight of his impatience is clear in his eyes. He's waited so long to see Max come back to him, and every minute feels like an eternity. I just want him to be okay. I need him to be okay. Claire glances up at him, her expression kind but firm. He'll get there. It's not about wanting him to be okay, Thomas. It's about letting him heal at his own pace. He's been through something traumatic. The body and the mind both need time to process what happened. Thomas sighs, his fingers running through his hair as he sits back in the chair. It's hard to take her words in fully. It's hard to accept that Max's healing is not something he can control. He wants to fix everything, to make it all right again. But that's not how this works. He knows that. Claire's calm, grounded presence is a balm to his frayed nerves, but it's not a cure for his anxiety, his fear of losing Max forever. Still, there's a part of him that believes Claire. A part of him that trusts her expertise, her calm assurance that Max will make it through. After all, Claire has done this before. She's been through rescues, through the slow process of healing animals who have faced trauma. She's seen this before. You've done everything right? Claire says, as if reading his thoughts. The hardest part is over, Thomas. Now, we just need to keep moving forward. Her words are comforting, even though they don't erase the fear that still lingers in the pit of Thomas's stomach. But they do offer something else, hope. Maybe, just maybe, he hasn't failed Max after all. Maybe there's still a chance for both of them. Claire stands, motioning for Thomas to follow her as she prepares to leave. I'll be back in a few days to check in. In the meantime, keep him comfortable. Let him rest. Let him take things at his own pace. Thomas nods, grateful for her guidance. He walks her to the door, and as she steps outside, he watches her go. A strange calm settles over him, a quiet assurance that things are moving in the right direction. He looks back at Max, who is still lying on the couch. But there's something different about the way he's lying there. It's subtle, but it's there. His body no longer completely limp, his eyes no longer vacant. Max's chest rises and falls in a steady rhythm, and when their eyes meet, Thomas sees it a spark of recognition, a flicker of life. It's small, but it's there. Thomas walks over to Max slowly, his heart in his throat. He kneels beside his dog, reaching out to gently stroke his fur. Max's tail twitches, just slightly, and for the first time in what feels like forever, Thomas smiles. Max is still here, and he's going to make it. They both are. The first rays of sunlight pierce through the blinds, painting the room in a soft, golden glow. It's a new day. But there's something different about this morning, something that wasn't there before. The air feels warmer, lighter, almost like the world has exhaled after holding its breath for far too long. Thomas stands by the window, looking out at the world as it begins to wake up. The street outside is still, the houses in the distance bathed in the early morning light. But it's not just the world outside that feels renewed. It's the house itself. The weight that had settled in the corners of every room has begun to lift. Max, lying on his bed in the corner of the living room, stirs gently. His body moves slowly, cautiously, but there's movement, life. Thomas watches with quiet anticipation as Max's eyes flicker open. He stretches his legs, testing them, before letting out a soft whimper. It's not much, but it's enough, the faintest sign of progress. Max is still fragile, still recovering, but the dog is here, he's present. And for the first time in days, Thomas allows himself to breathe. It's been weeks since the accident, and though the road to recovery has been long and difficult, Thomas knows that this is just the beginning. Max is getting stronger each day, little by little, and as he looks down at his dog, Thomas feels a mixture of relief and gratitude. He's been through so much in such a short amount of time, but they've made it. Together, they've made it through. Max lifts his head slightly, meeting Thomas's gaze. There's a quiet understanding between them, an unspoken connection that goes beyond words. Thomas smiles, his heart swelling with love for the dog who has been by his side through everything. Max's body is still weak, but his spirit, his fierce loyalty, his unbreakable bond with Thomas has never wavered. And that, more than anything, gives Thomas hope. The days begin to feel lighter. The mornings are filled with soft, tentative steps as Max starts to regain his strength. Thomas continues to care for him, slowly but surely, with patience and gentle encouragement. He helps Max move, guiding him with steady hands as the dog begins to take more steps on his own. It's a slow process. Max's legs are still fragile, his movements unsure, but there's progress. Every small victory feels monumental. A flick of the tail, a soft bark, a wag of the ears. Each sign of improvement is like a promise, a reminder that Max is still here, still fighting. Thomas spends every moment with Max, his days revolving around the dog's needs, from feeding to stretching exercises, from watching over him to providing the comfort and reassurance that Max so desperately needs. It's a routine that feels oddly familiar, despite everything that's happened. It's not just about nursing Max back to health. It's about rebuilding their relationship, finding their way back to each other after the trauma that nearly tore them apart. The quiet moments are the ones that speak the loudest. When Thomas sits beside Max, resting a hand on the dog's back, feeling the warmth of his body under his fingers. When Max looks up at him with those soulful eyes, it's as if they're saying something unspoken, something only they understand. There's still so much left to heal, but there's a quiet understanding between them. One afternoon, as Thomas sits in the living room with Max resting beside him, the doorbell rings again. This time, the sound is less jarring, less of a surprise. Thomas knows who it is before he even opens the door. Claire, of course. She's been checking in regularly, guiding them through the recovery process. Her visits are a source of comfort, not only because of her expertise, but because she offers a steady presence, one that reassures Thomas when the doubt creeps in. Claire steps inside, her warm smile greeting them both. She's seen the progress. She can see it in Max's eyes, the way his body seems less tense, less withdrawn. He's still slow, still cautious, but there's life in him now, a vibrancy that wasn't there before. The bond between them, Thomas and Max, is undeniable. The love they share, the loyalty, the connection, It's something that can't be broken, no matter the obstacles. How's he been? Claire asks, her eyes searching Max's face for any sign of change. Better. Thomas replies, his voice filled with gratitude. He's moving more, he's responding. Claire kneels beside Max, her hands moving over his body with care. Max lifts his head as she gently checks his legs, his eyes still cloudy but alert, following her every move. It's not perfect, but it's progress. That's what matters now. Claire smiles softly, a knowing look in her eyes. You've done great, Thomas. You've given him the space and the time he needed. And he's strong. He'll get there. Thomas watches Claire, her calm presence grounding him. He knows she's right. They've come so far, and they've done it together. Max's recovery has been a slow, sometimes painful journey, but they're not done yet. It's not about rushing or forcing things. It's about moving at the pace that Max needs, taking each step as it comes. But with Claire's guidance and Thomas's unwavering commitment, he knows they're on the right path. Max, sensing the reassurance in the room, shifts slightly, his tail flicking for the first time in what feels like forever. The sound of the soft thud against the floor fills the room with a sense of quiet victory. It's small, but it's enough. Thomas reaches down, his hand gently resting on Max's head, and the dog nuzzles into him, his eyes closing with the comfort of familiar touch. They've come so far, and though the road ahead is still long, Thomas feels a deep sense of peace settle over him. There's no need to rush. There's no need to force things. What matters now is the journey of healing, of rebuilding trust, of finding their way back to each other. For the first time in weeks, Thomas allows himself to truly relax. The fear that had been his constant companion has loosened its grip, and though there are still moments of doubt, he knows deep down that Max is going to be okay. They've both been through something extraordinary. They've fought their way back from the edge together, and no matter what happens next, they will face it side by side. As the evening light begins to fade, the room grows quieter. The shadows stretch long across the floor, but they are no longer suffocating. They are just part of the landscape, part of the natural ebb and flow of the world. And in this stillness, Thomas knows one thing with certainty. There is hope. There is always hope. Max lifts his head again, his eyes meeting Thomas's. For the first time in days, the connection between them feels whole again. Max is still here, and they are both ready for the next step of their journey, together.